If you have flat feet or collapsed arches and you're also dealing with some knee or hip or even low back pain, this video is for you. Typically what we see is a whole foot that is collapsed in as an entire unit when we have flat feet. And this is what we would refer to as an internally rotated foot. Now this whole foot is collapsing in because it's usually trying to make up for something that was lacking either at the foot or higher up the chain like the hip. Typically our spine curves on our head and our rib cage and our hips should be stacked in a way that allows our weight to be evenly distributed over our foot. But if we lack internal rotation, particularly at, let's say, the hip, we're going to dump our pelvis forward, and that's going to allow us to access more internal rotation here. But look at what just happened to his center of gravity of his lower body. It just went forward. That weight going forward onto our foot can assist in the foot arches going down closer to the floor. A common place you see a limitation is internal rotation of the hip. We need pronation or lowering of the foot arch as we walk to turn our pelvis away from a side like this. But once we start to load this leg and the other leg comes off of the ground and we turn our hips towards the stance leg side, we need to have a higher arch position of the foot and also internal rotation of that hip. So if you have flat feet and your knees hurt, one potential reason why is that you're too forward within your center of gravity, your pelvis is dumped forward too much. That's putting a lot of stress on your knees. The other potential reason is that as you're walking, you can't properly turn into this side all the way because that foot arch can't rise, and that's putting a lot of stress on your knees because you can't properly load and turn into your hips. If you want a more comprehensive program that addresses issues exactly like this and flat feet, and also how those issues address the rest of the body, check out my Lower Limb Foundations program. It is designed for anyone to be able to do, and also it addresses not only the feet, but incorporates the better foot mechanics with the hips, with the trunk, and even with the head. It is truly a total body approach, and that way you can get better long-term results. If you want to learn more, check it out down below in the description. In order to do this drill well, you need either a hand towel like this, or even better, some wedges like this. Now I know most people don't have these wedges, so we're going to do this with the towel demonstration, but I'm gonna show you the setup with the wedges too, so that way it's more clear where these things need to be placed, because it's easier to visualize that with the wedges. So what we're gonna do is take one wedge and just a little bit of it, and we're gonna place it underneath the base of the big toe and the second toe right there, but just enough to make sure that we're keeping a lot of contact of this point right here. The other toes are off of it. Maybe a little bit of the second toe is on it, but not much. Now the other wedge is going to go here underneath the inside half of the heel right there. So that way Trevor throughout this drill can keep the contact points of this and the inner heel the entire time. If you're using a towel about this thick and then give it one fold over like that is generally all you need. And you're going to place those contact points of the foot right on that towel right there. Perfect, just like that. So what Trevor's going to do first is he's going to put his hands on his hips, and he wants to do a very slight posterior pelvic tilt. So if Trevor imagines his pelvis is a bowl of water, he doesn't want it spilling out the front too much or the back too much. You want to have your pelvis relatively level with the floor and then just tilt it back ever so slightly, but you don't want to lose height in your skeleton as you do that. So Trevor, I don't want you to slouch over. I want him to be relatively tall. The next thing we're going to do is feel the proper foot contacts on this foot that's being supported by the wedges or the towel. So we're going to focus on this part right here, which is the base of the big toe and the inner heel, and also the outside base of the little toe right here. It's going to be most challenging to keep this point and this point right here. So what Trevor's going to do is maintaining that slight tilt of his pelvis back. He is going to stay really heavy on this left foot, and he is going to push his right knee very slightly forward and turn his hips to the left. And at some point, he's going to reach an end range where he can't turn his pelvis to the left anymore, but he wants to keep his eyes and trunk relatively straight ahead. Now, the key here is as he turns his pelvis to the left, this knee has to stay straight. It cannot turn out like that. That is bad. So always keep the intention to keep the knee perfectly straight ahead. If you feel like that knee is starting to turn out like this, then you've gone too far and you're over-rotating. So keep this knee straight ahead, turn the pelvis to the left, and then you're going to reach that end range. At this point, what you want to do is lock out the knee a little bit, and you're going to feel a little bit of your quad engage. Okay. Now, notice how Trevor's eyes are straight ahead. We're gonna do this again, and he's gonna slightly turn his pelvis to the left a little bit more. That right knee come a little bit more forward. Now he's gonna reach a point where he starts to feel maybe a stretch in the back of his left hip. That's good, but he should not feel anything in his low back. And then he's going to try and straighten out the knee just a tiny bit more. You don't want to hyperextend the knee. You should have a straight line down, but that's going to engage the quad more, and you don't want that knee turning out excessively too. Remember, the knee's got to stay straight ahead. And then if he has room, he's going to go one more time. So he's going to rotate a tiny bit more. This might be a matter of centimeters or inches. And he's going to feel maybe a little bit bigger stretch in the back of his left hip. And he's gonna feel like it's hard to keep these points of contact right here, but he's gotta keep these down right here. And then he's going to lock out his knee one final time, feeling that quad work. But if you feel any pressure in your knee, then you're probably trying to lock out the quad too much, or you're over rotating and that knee is turning out like that, which you don't wanna do. Most people are gonna try and rotate too much right here. It's subtle, it's easy, but it should feel like, again, your eyes can stay straight ahead and you're turning enough to the point where it's challenging for you to keep these points of contact down, but you are able to do it. By far the most common mistake we're gonna see here is that people usually start off with the right pelvis position. It's nice and neutral and a little bit tucked, but as they rotate more and more into it, they're gonna flare and arch, and that is not what we wanna see whatsoever. So we gotta make sure that the pelvis stays tucked under, and we're only rotating so much into that hip, so that way we maintain that pelvis position. If you're over rotating, then your whole torso and your whole head is gonna wanna come with you, and we don't want that. And finally, if you're having a hard time keeping this point and this point down as you rotate more, then you could just simply roll up the towel more, or just slide these wedges underneath your foot a little bit more, and that can make it easier to find those points of contact. After doing that for 2 sets of 8 reps, you can see that his rotation has significantly improved. Thank you for watching, and like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video.